Mic check 1 2 1 2. How you doing, everybody? I'm your host, Mikal Butler. First of all, I have a few things I want to talk about before we actually get into the podcast itself. For one, I just want to say thank you for everyone who watched the first video and subscribed. Your subscriptions and views mean a lot to me, and I'm really appreciative of how fast it's grown. Off just one episode, like it went up very quickly. Um, the next thing, clearly, I'm sure you've noticed, I'm not in the same spot where I recorded the first video. So pretty much, I move a lot. I grew up on Long Island, but I moved to Pennsylvania, and now I live in Arizona. So I'm around the country very often. I'll be in Arizona for the next video I drop. So stay tuned because I'll be all over the country with a bunch of different places. The next thing is very important. I will actually start releasing videos every other week, just due to how much I do travel and all the things that go on in my life. I'm trying to get into grad school at the moment. With all that going on, it'd be much more beneficial for me if I had more time to record the videos and edit and all that stuff. Lastly is the idea of blooper videos. So I'm thinking that about the end of every month, after about 2 or 3 episodes, I could drop a video of just bloopers of me just in between takes, goofing around, whatever the case may be. But I will definitely leave your thoughts in the comment section, please. Let me know what you think about potentially having a bloopers section to the videos, or a bloopers video. I think it would be pretty funny, to be honest. So down to business. So in the last episode, if you did watch it, I dropped a term called displacement. I started to describe it a little bit and break down what that means, but the skill of displacement is something that's very difficult to attain for a lot of people, but it's one of the most important skills you need for any aspect of life and any decision you're trying to make. So that's exactly what we're going to talk about today. Today's episode is called the skill of displacement. So, as always, I'm going to be reading from my book a little bit here. Please bear with me. So, the key to abstract thinking is the ability to see a situation and view it from a different perspective rather than your own. This is done through displacement, which is removing yourself physically or mentally from a situation to grasp a better understanding of something. The mental refers to emotional removal or quote-unquote self-gain removal to come to the most logical answer. So basically, this is just removing any type of emotion or personal bias you have from the situation. That way you're able to attain the most logical outcome. Which also typically means, removing yourself from any type of self-gain. What can I get out of this? Removing that idea from your head, from your mind, will cause you to make more logical answers or come to a more logical decision. With this skill, our actions and decisions should be made with minimal emotion, but with facts and logic. That's the best way to come about the best answer. Being able to detach yourself emotionally from a certain situation and make the best decision, in my mind, is one of the most important traits you can have as a leader. So this eliminates the use of any rash decisions. So when I think of this, I think about military leaders, right? People whose decisions can mean life or death for their fellow army mates, for their fellow soldiers. Here's an example. Let's say you had to make a decision to save the 3 most loved beings in your life, or the 3 most important people to humanity while facing human extinction. The logical choice would be to save the 3 people who are most important to humanity, so that way they would be the most helpful to rebuilding civilization. However, most people will actually choose the 3 people that they love the most over the 3 people that are most important. So you would have to use displacement to remove yourself emotionally to make the more logical choice, and I guess in this situation be a bit less selfish. I guess the more popular example would be to kill 1 person to save 10, or to let 10 people die to save that 1 person. Logically, it would make more sense to kill that 1 person rather than to kill 10 people just to save the 1 person. You know what I'm saying? It's a matter of what do you see to be more suitable in the situation based on logic. But we're talking about perspectives here, so let's look at it from a different perspective. So I believe that there are 2 types of displacement. One is first person displacement, which is putting yourself in the shoes of someone else. So let's say, for example, I'm having an altercation with another person, and for some reason we're not connecting. So for me, first person displacement would be to put myself in that person's shoes and see the conversation from that person's perspective. The other form of displacement is third person displacement. So that is basically, instead of going from first person, which would be the opposite person, like I just said, it would be looking from the outside in. So let's say the same person, him and I are having an altercation, we just can't come to terms about something. And now for the third person perspective, it's someone outside of the conversation that's able to look inward, able to see both sides and create a decision off of the logicalness of both arguments. I would say most people, in the face of some type of disagreement or argument, would tell you to put yourself in that person's shoes, see how they feel. However, I believe that third person perspective, displacement, if you will, is the most important of these two. I think if you're able to completely detach yourself from the situation and look from the outside in, then you would be able to create the most logical response for that situation. Third person displacement helps you think unbiasedly and attempts to sever any emotional or mental connections you once had with that situation. So as I just said, you're able to completely erase all type of emotional connection and anything that you would find in the first person. So okay, let me first see how this person may feel about it. Okay, I kind of understand their situation and how they're looking at it. But now let me look at it from a third person displacement. Let me see what this looks like, what their argument is versus my argument from someone that has no bias against either one position. With the ability to look not only at that person's experiences, but also look at it from an outside experience, looking inward, you're able to eliminate any type of personal bias or even bias that that person is bringing to the table in order to come to a more complete and logical explanation or answer. So the examples I gave were pretty drastic, not every day you're going to have to make a life or death decision. So I guess the question is, how do I use this in a less dire situation? How can I displace myself to where I'm not corrupted with my own bias? Now, I wouldn't say that this is certainly a very grave decision-making skill, but I wouldn't say that it's needed in every decision-making process. I would say it's more so probably relevant to instances where you're, like I used in my example, having a disagreement with someone, or you're attempting to see something from a different viewpoint. That way you can gather everything, which brings me back to the relativity of truth. So while using displacement and being able to see things from different perspectives, you're also able to find your own personal truth. So I would say displacement should come most handy, most likely when you're gathering information. It should always be when you're gathering information. That way there's no bias, of course, with anything you're learning, because our educational systems are, I can guarantee you, not in the best shape. And like I said, if you think that you're not brainwashed by our educational system, then you are sadly mistaken. We all are. Even I'm still learning about things that aren't, exactly how they should be. Now, with that being said, information, of course, and like I said earlier, any type of decision making involving someone or something that has an opposing viewpoint. So with this skill, I believe I gave you two extremes. One, which was very dire, life or death decisions. The next being more everyday decisions, things that I'm coming in encounter with. Now, how do we use this on a bigger scale, yet one that's a bit less dire than death? So we would use this to answer questions about our society, our social issues, things like that. And I believe displacement is probably the most important thing we can do, especially in times like these. I really try my best not to step on any toes or trigger anyone with this podcast, because I want this to be strictly philosophical with the overcasting image of improving society. I want to give people, obviously, a more intellectual, abstract, different way of thinking, that way we're able to solve all the social issues we have today. So no matter which side of the page you're on, I want you to be able to think intellectually. I want you to be able to solve our problems, Ask the question, if I'm agreeing with this certain point, how come you're not agreeing with that? How come you have this point on your mind? So I think it's important. So let me use a example that doesn't exactly pertain to what we're going through today. For example, let's use the Berlin Wall, for example. They split the country of Germany in two. You know, they have, and this was two major countries having issues. This had nothing to do with the people of Germany, you know, and a lot of German people had problems with that wall. There were plenty of issues that went on. Unfortunately, I'm not historically educated enough to talk about what happened or how they felt because I have no experience of how they felt. However, no one asked how they felt. No one thought, what are we doing to the people of Germany, doing to the people that have to deal with this wall on a daily basis? You know, people make decisions but completely disregard how someone else is feeling or maybe what the information or statistics or education says about something. They say, you know what, I have this opinion, I have this stance, and I'm sticking to it. That's cool, but make sure that you're able to not only consider any type of personal bias you have, but also any type of misused information that you're gaining to get to that point. Hence, displacement is very important. Well, I hope you guys are able to see the importance of displacement and how much it means to step in someone else's shoes, but also to step outside of the picture frame and look inward and see what kind of issues are going on. And now for this part of the episode, I'm very excited. I actually did have a couple of questions that people decided to ask me, so we're starting to get a little bit of Q&A going. So here is Mic Check Q&A section. So I'll try to take my time to think because I think that, you know, any question that you're given, you should, you know, take the time to think about your answer before you speak. That way you know what you're saying cannot be misinterpreted or maybe skewed in the wrong way. So I have two questions from a really good friend of mine. Shout out Cam. So here's one of the questions he has. Is there subjective and objective truth? Well, for one, I would say yes. Subjective truth, obviously, like I said in my last video, is more personal and for that person. And objective truth would be something more like math, something that is widely known and considered more of a fact than it would be a truth. Does that make sense? The next question he had was, is an opinion the same as a subjective truth? Or if it is not, does an opinion become subjective truth? Now thinking about this, it kind of, you know, made me sit down and think a little bit. I would have to say that an opinion is the same thing as a subjective truth because it is what that person perceives of that certain situation or concept. Now, considering that an opinion is subjective truth, an opinion cannot become subjective truth. So that's the last of the questions here on Mic Check. Once again, I would like to thank you all for tuning in and listening. I hope that we can continue this intellectual journey together and we can continue to embrace ourselves as intellectual beings and philosophers. Please like, share, comment. Any questions you have for the Q&A section, please, I want your questions. I want to hear what you guys have to say. So please ask as many questions as you want in the comment section. If you know me personally, please feel free to reach out. And my phone is always on me, as I'm sure my parents would tell you. So, make out, you dead.